Hello, welcome back to another video. August is over. It's gone. We are sort of officially in autumn now, but let's see if I read any good books in August. So yeah, it was quite a random reader month, as you will see. Very random. But I did read 14 books, which is pretty good, though some of them were pretty short. You'll see in a minute. So I read 4,172 pages. I also DNF'd 3 books, so we'll talk about those as well. So normal run on order. If you haven't been here before, I'll do a statsy bit first on reading stats, and then we'll go into the books and I will cover them in the order that I read them, because my brain can't handle any other system. Oh dear, it's getting a bit late here, but I've got to get this filmed today so I can edit tomorrow, so I look like trash. So mood wise, 50% was reflective and emotional, so that's about right. And then the other sort of biggish chunks in the old pie were adventurous, sad, informative, and hopeful. So hopeful isn't like normal for me. But the rest of them are pretty standard, so yeah. Page count wise, 64% of what I read was under 300 pages, which is what's sort of meaning that I read more books than what I would usually read in August. 21% between 300 and 500, and then the remaining 14% above 500. Pace wise, 50% were medium paced, and then we had 14% fast, and the rest were slow paced, which again is about normal. I don't read that many fast paced books. I do lean more towards sort of medium to slow. 14% non-fiction, so that was 2 books that were non-fiction this month. Genre wise, we had 5 literary, 5 historical, 4 classics, and then 2 apiece for children's, LGBTQ, sci-fi, romance and contemporary, and then a load of other stuff. So if you haven't been here before, Storygraph sometimes categorises books under more than one genre, so that's why there's more than 14 here. Format wise, I only read 3 physical books. I had 4 ebooks and the rest were all audiobooks, so a very audio heavy month this month. Star rating wise, I actually had 4 5 stars, which is really good. 6 4 stars, 3 3 stars and 1 2 star, averaging out at 3.93. So yeah, a solid reading month. I'm pretty happy with that. So that's it for the stats. Let's talk about the DNFs first, shall we? Okay, so the first book I DNF'd, I was actually really gutted about. I DNF'd Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex by Oksana Zabuzhko, which was translated by Halyna, Hryn. And this was a really short book. It was really short, but it was stream of consciousness, and I was just very confused. I couldn't even tell you what it was about. It was translated from Ukrainian, and I was really excited to get to it. I'd never read anything translated from Ukrainian before, and it seemed like it was quite a feminist book from sort of what I'd heard, and I think that is probably true. But I got to about 30% of the way through the book and I had absolutely no clue what was happening. It was one of those where the sentences are like 2 pages long, just these run on sentences, and we were sort of switching between different, like, it was first person and then it was third person and then it was, and I was just like, oh, what is going on? There were no real characters in the book, and I couldn't work out if we were in someone's head or outside of someone's head or in different people's heads, and it was just too much for me. So it may well be very good, and I did try it as an ebook and as an audiobook to see if it was easier one way or the other, but no, I couldn't cope with it, so that got DNF'd. I was really sad because that was the Women in Translation group read. So you win some, you lose some, hey? The next book I DNF'd was actually a buddy read that I was reading with Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf and Jack from Spread Bookjoy, and we were reading Virginia Andrews' Flowers in the Attic. So we were reading this for Garb August, and I did actually make it to about 60% of the way through, and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was actually really boring, considering it was quite horrific sort of premise. I don't even want to tell you what it's about. If you're interested, go and check it out. But it was just really boring. I even tried to skim to keep going, and I still didn't care. I literally couldn't have cared less if all of the characters jumped out of a window, and actually that would have made the book better. But it's like an 11 book series as well, and I was just like, no, I just don't care. I just don't care. And the writing was not very good. Oh, sorry, dodgy knee. And yeah, so I bailed out on that at 60%. I don't think I missed that much. Alison and Jack sort of gave me a rundown of what happened at the end. I have no regrets. And then the last bit that I DNF'd was a random pick. I was in the car, I wanted an audiobook. I was listening to The Trees by Percival Everett, and I just wanted something easier to listen to, something that the language was easy, it was easy to follow, and I thought, oh, you know what, I'll try a thriller. And I picked up a thriller on Libby, didn't know nothing about it, just thought, that'll do. I was wrong. So I picked up Snap by Belinder Bauer, and it was, so you follow like two timelines. So you've got these kids whose mum left them in the car because their car broke down and went to phone for help, and then you never see her again. And then 3 years in the future, a pregnant woman who someone breaks into her house and then leaves a creepy message saying that they could have killed her and a knife on her bedside table. And again, I just didn't care. I think I was just in one of those moods where it didn't matter what I picked up. I just wasn't in the mood for anything. So yeah, I DNF that as well. I won't go back to it. So with the negatives out of the way, I do feel like a grumpy bitch today, FYI. So the first book I finished was a buddy read, and I read The Lincoln Highway by Amor, Towles, The Lovely Jack from Spread Bookjoy. And this is a book where we are following a young boy, Emmett, who is released from sort of like a juvenile detention centre, and the sheriff or whatever drives him home. And he gets home, his father died while he was in prison, and he sort of left to look after his younger brother. But then he realises, after the sheriff bloke has left, that two of the guys from the detention centre snuck out in the boot of the car and at his house. And the story sort of takes off from there. And I really loved this book. I thought it was fabulous. It was all the things I love. It was slow burn, it was character led, and there was a real thread of storytelling through the book. So the younger brother has this book of sort of heroes, and he takes that with him throughout the book, and it sort of ties into other characters, and it just, it's delightful. It's just storytelling at its best. And yeah, I just really got on with the writing style, and it was multiple perspective as well, which was fabulous because we had some morally grey characters in it, we had some really lovely adorable characters in it, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be reading more by Amor, Towles. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I finished was originally a buddy read that I started in June with Emily from Novell Novels, and we were reading Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. Unfortunately, I, in true Doma fashion, had overcommitted, and then BookTube Prize was happening, and I sort of had to put it down and come back to it. And I finished it early on in August, and I loved it. It was brilliant. I love Thomas Hardy. I think he must be one of my favourite classic authors. And in this one we follow Bathsheba, who is a young woman, and she inherits a farm and she gets some male attention, and it's about these different suitors and how she reacts to them and the decisions that she makes. And yeah, I loved it. I thought it was fabulous. I loved the characters, I loved the shades of grey, I loved the way that you root for these characters even though they make the most ridiculous decisions sometimes. I loved the nature writing, the descriptive setting that we were in. I just thought it was brilliant. I did do a video comparing this book to Persuasion, so comparing Hardy and Austen. If you missed that, I'll leave that in the description box below. But yeah, it was so good. 4 stars, mainly because it wasn't as good as Tess of the D'Urbervilles in my humble opinion, but yeah, really loved it. The next book I finished was a middle grade, and again this was just a random one a random one that I picked up, and that was The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. And this was a lovely story. At the beginning of the story, a boat sort of sinks in a storm, and it's full of robots, and one of the robots gets washed up on shore and isn't destroyed by the storm, and then that robot has to learn how to survive in the wilderness with the animals on this uninhabited island. And it's about their journey, really, their journey of discovery, self-discovery, and I just loved it. I thought it was a really delightful children's book. If you haven't come across that one, I do recommend. And there is a sequel which I would like to get to as well. So yeah, really, really lovely book. Really lovely book. The next book I finished was Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession, the second in the Six Tudor Queens series by Alison Weir. And this I am reading for the Tudor Along, which I'm co-hosting with Emily from Novell Novels and Danny from Danny's Book World. And it was okay. It was okay. There were parts of it I not disliked, but just didn't love. The audiobook was not very good. You may have heard me say this before, but when narrators put on stupid voices for the opposite sex, it really annoys me. And this had a female narrator who did that for Henry, so it made Henry sound like a moron, and so that really detracted from the story for me, and I just, yeah, it annoyed me quite a lot, and some other people in the group as well. But yeah, I don't know, I didn't completely get on board with the portrayal of Anne in this. It started off really strong, and I was really invested at the beginning because it looks at Anne's life before she joins the English court, so when she's in the Dutch court and the French court, and I really loved all of that, and I thought that was brilliant. And then as soon as it got into like the actual nitty gritty, and also some of the creative decisions that Alison Weir took around Mary Boleyn, I didn't think were very realistic. But overall, it was a good book, and obviously I'll be continuing the series because I'm posting a read along for it, but I only gave it 3 stars. The next book I finished was Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. So this is not my usual kind of book. This was another Garb August book, and I did do a vlog of me reading this, but it is full of spoilers, so if this is on your TBR, do not watch that video. But I actually really enjoyed it. It was just like brain candy, and yeah, it was just fun and easy to read. Ridiculous, pretty poorly written, but completely and utterly addictive. 3 stars, but I will be continuing with the series. The next book I finished was the Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. So this is sort of an anthology of a podcast that he did. So he did a podcast where he basically reviewed things from the Anthropocene era. So anything from air conditioning to sunsets to mortification. He reviewed mortification, and that one I was absolutely wetting myself, and I was listening to that while walking the dog, so people were like walking past me like, what is that girl laughing at? But yeah, there were bits that made me tear up in this, there were bits that had me laughing out loud, and it was just really well constructed, just all these little sections that he talked about, and yeah, I loved it. I really, really loved it. I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was narrated by John Green, wrong brother, John Green, and he narrates it obviously in the tone that he wrote it. So it just comes across brilliantly, and 5 stars, 5 massive stars. I thought it was fabulous. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. And yeah, it's just fun and informative and delightful, and yeah, highly recommend if you're looking for a good non-fiction audio. Yeah, that really worked for me. The next book I finished was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I did a dedicated review for this, so I'll leave that link below, and I won't talk about it too much because there's 14 books, but it wasn't for me. It's a list of military strategy. You can take some philosophical meaning out of it if you're that way inclined. And I spoke to Brandon from Brandon's Bookshelf in the comments briefly, and he was like, I love this book. But Brandon is definitely like a philosophical kind of reader, and I am not. So yeah, hopefully Brandon will put up a review of the other side of this book. But for me, for, you know, Joe Blogs, 2 stars. The next book I finished was a book that's on the long list for the Booker Prize for this year, and that was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And this is a really short novella where we follow a man in Ireland, and it's coming up to Christmas, and I can't really say that much because it's really short, but he delivers like coal and stuff to the local village town, and he goes around and he meets some people, and there is like a main plot element within it that I won't talk about because I think it's better to go in without knowing. And this was nice. It was a nice story, but I felt like I needed more from it. I think if this had been a complete story, if it had gone on for another 100 pages, 200 pages to develop what had happened, I would have really liked it. I liked the writing style, I liked the ambience that was set, but there just wasn't enough for me to get my teeth into. I know that people are probably going to be going, that's the whole point, Gemma, and maybe it is, but it just wasn't enough for me. I don't like short stories, and this was just like a long short story that wasn't long enough. It didn't kind of fit into either camp for me. So yeah, it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It was nice enough. I will try more by Claire Keegan because I did like her writing style, but yeah, sort of ambivalent really. The next book I finished was another book that's on the book along list, and that was The Colony by Audrey McGee. I also have a review up for that which went up this week, so again I won't go into loads of detail, but the headlines are, this again is an Irish book set on a remote island, and it's really looking at language and art, and it's a very quiet book, and it was just too literary for me. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, I'll leave that review below, but it wasn't really my jam. I gave it 3 stars. There were good elements about it, and I can understand why people really rate this book, but I just found it quite dull. There's interesting things in it, but overall that was the impression that I came away with. The next book that I finished was The Velveteen Rabbit by Marjorie Williams. So yeah, this is a children's book and I read this to Charlie, but I feel like I missed out, like in my childhood. I'd never ever read this before, and I saw it in a charity shop and I was like, right, I'm gonna buy it because I'm like the only person in the world who hasn't read The Velveteen Rabbit. And this is just about a rabbit, a toy rabbit who wants to be a real rabbit, and it's just delightful. I gave this 5 stars. It's such a lovely children's book. It has beautiful illustrations in. It's just a whimsical, beautiful children's story. So if you haven't read it, I recommend. This is pretty old as well, isn't it? I don't know when this was first published. First published in 1922. So it's 100 years old this year, and it definitely still resonates today. It's just a very good children's book. The next book I finished was another Booker book, and that was Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. And in this we're following a young woman, Kiara, who is not having the best of times. Neither of her parents are about. Her brother is supposed to really be taking the lead because he is older and sort of paying the rent and stuff, but his off pursuing a non-existent rap career, and she is left to sort of deal with all of the bills. There's a little boy down the corridor of the apartment building where she lives whose mother is MIA. She's looking after him as well, and she basically falls into prostitution, and we follow it from there, and it deals with issues of race and social injustice and poverty and family and the child adult line, and I just adored it. I do have a review coming out for this next Thursday, but by far and away of the 4, I've nearly finished my 5th books that I've read for the booker, this one is my absolute favourite. I thought it was dabby daisy. If you liked Careless by Kirsty Capes, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, any of those, I think you will really like this. It's that sort of style of book, quite aggressive and current and important, and yeah, I loved it. 5 fat stars. The next book I finished was another children's book. Again, I'm just trying to re-educate myself. I was obviously in a children-y mood, and I read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Don't know if I said that right. This is obviously a book that everybody has read except for me. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I have to say, when I started this, I was not sure. So we're following a bloke who can only draw boa constrictors from the inside and boa constrictors from the outside. Anyway, he's in the desert, his plane crashes, and then a little prince arrives, and we sort of see this little prince's journey from the planet where he lives to this moment, and it's got lots of nice messaging in it about morals and how adults are stupid, basically. And yeah, like I said, I wasn't sure in the beginning, but come the end, I thought it was actually really quite magical, and the ending in particular was fabulous. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was 4 stars, and I am glad that I finally got around to reading this book. The next book that I finished was another book that I buddy read. I've buddy read this one with Fraser from Fraser Simon's Springboard Thought, and that is S by Slavenka Djukulic, which is translated, I think, from the Croatian by Marko Ivic. I don't know how to talk about this book. In this, we follow a young woman, S, and her experiences in a Bosnian prison camp. So this happens in 1992 when the Yugoslavian War, the Balkan War, was happening. This woman was, I think, half Serbian and half Bosnian Muslim. I can't quite remember, but basically one of her parents was Muslim, and so she was detained in this camp in Bosnia. And this is probably definitely this is definitely the most difficult book I have ever read in my life. It was horrific. It really gets under the skin of war and what that does to the people in the war. It's very well told. It's told in third person, so you always feel, it's like you should feel detached from this character because it's not in first person, but you don't feel detached. You feel very much in this prison camp with S, and yeah, it really gets you thinking about these women, about what they went through, how they survived, how they managed to carry on after the war, and it's really difficult to talk about because it was so horrific. If you are triggered by anything at all, don't pick this up. If you're in a low mood, do not pick this up. I will link Kieran at KD Books review to this below because that's where I first saw it and thought I would like to give it a go, and he reviews it much much more eloquently than I have just done. But yeah, it was 5 stars. Without a shadow of a doubt, a 5-star book. But really hard to read. And then the final book I finished was also a book that I was buddy reading in June. This time with Nikki from Red Dot Reads, and I literally finished this like on the last day of the month, and that's Patsy by Nicole Dennis Benn. I got behind Booktube Prize, we've talked about this, but I have finally finished it. And this, Nicole Dennis Benn is a Jamaican author, and this follows a young woman, Patsy, who decides to abandon her daughter to pursue the woman that she loves, who is in America. So she leaves Jamaica, goes to the US, and things aren't quite what she thought they would be, but she just abandons her daughter, True, in Jamaica for her father to raise. And we get the perspective of both Patsy and True in this, and I really enjoyed it. I think the way that Patsy was portrayed, considering that as a mother, the decision that she made goes against everything that I could ever do. You do feel yourself sympathising with Patsy, and then you get the True chapters and your heart just breaks for this little girl of, I think she was 5 or 6 when Patsy left, who doesn't understand why her mother has left her. And oh yeah, it was fantastic. It looks at Jamaican culture. There are obviously strong LGBTQ themes within this. It looks at love and forgiveness and redemption and what it is to be yourself. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I would highly recommend, if you are looking to get into some more Jamaican or Caribbean fiction, this is very good. And I would like to pick up Nicole Dennis Benn's other book, Here Comes the Sun, which I think was her first novel. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and would recommend. And that, my loves, is 14 books. So let me know, did you have any 5-star reads in August? And if so, what were they? I always love to know this, so that I can add to my ridiculous TBR. And if you'd like to see what I am reading in September, I will leave my TBR here, and I will see you all very soon with another one. Bye guys.